Hi, my name is John.
And my name is Lloyd.
And we're the hosts of The Pint,
a pop culture podcast.
Lloyd, if you had to tell any of the people out there that might be listening to The Pint for the first time about anything unsavory or disconcerting we might do on the show, what would you warn them about?
Well, sometimes we drop spoilers, and sometimes we swear like motherfucking sailors.
Fuck yeah, we do. You heard it from him. You've been warned.
Listen in.
Thank you, Lightbringer. The ruler of hell is honorable indeed. I will not forget this.
Honorable? You joke, surely.
All right, welcome to another episode of The Pint. I'm John, with me today, Lindsay, and we're here to talk about TV. We don't talk about TV very much, but you and I, married, nighttime, we watch some TV together, right?
Couches,
TV,
dogs,
snacks,
sometimes snacks,
freezer pops.
You are addicted to those freezer pops right now.
I love freezer pops. They're so good.
100 from Amazon, and I'm wondering how long they're going to be around.
Not long. What was it, like $8?
Yeah, it was cheap.
Yeah. I had boozy freezer pops a couple, last year. Remember that?
No.
Yeah, I picked them up one night when we recorded. I don't remember who was here.
I do, yeah.
Yeah. And,
weren't they, giant, too? Like a couple...
Big boozy freezer pops, yeah.
Yeah.
Big boozy freezer pops. That was a good way to get a...
That was your strip club name.
Big boozy freezer pops?
Yeah.
Yeah, baby. Oh, man. I would have fit right in. All right, so we watched The Sandman, which premiered on Netflix August 5th of 2027. 10 episodes, but a couple weeks after the 10th episode, they all dropped on the same day on Netflix, but then a couple weeks later, they dropped an 11th bonus episode. So we were going to record this last week, didn't get around to it, and then the bonus episode dropped, so we watched that. So let's record it now. So first things first, Sandman is based, obviously, I think most people would know, on a very popular comic book series that started in the 80s and went to the 90s. Right off the bat, I want to ask you, Lynn, when without you knowing anything about it, when I said, hey, do you want to watch this with me? Was it one of those fuck, I'll just watch it because he's asking and... I
feel like all of these are me just being like, yeah, I'll try it.
Yeah, but okay, so you watched, we talked about Prey,
right?
The Predator movie. Was Sandman at least, when I say to you, do you want to watch Sandman, does that have more interest to you than Prey being a Predator movie?
Definitely more interest, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So here, we'll give a little background on the comic for the listeners who might not know, and for you as well, because you've only seen the show. So created by Neil Gaiman, who is a writer, writes novels, he's written comics, all kinds of stuff, English gent. A couple years ago, me and your dad went and saw him live speak at the Bushnell.
Right, yeah.
Very cool, tell stories and stuff like that. Your dad's a fan.
He's a huge fan.
Although your dad's never read Sandman, right? Because your dad's not a comic guy, but he loves his books.
He loves his books. I'm not sure that he's ever read Sandman. I told him that this was on Netflix, so he said maybe this winter when there's not other things to do, he'd watch it.
When he's not so busy. So yeah, if you're not familiar with Neil Gaiman, a couple other things that he created, Coraline, which was a book and became a movie, very creepy, fucking kids. Remember that one?
I love the movie.
Yeah. And American Gods, which also became a TV show at one point. Some of the artists, I got to give them credit too, that he created Sandman with: Sam Keith, Jill Thompson, Mike Dringenberg, a lot more. 75 issues it ran, and it did not have a consistent artist, so people jumped in and jumped out. From 89 to 96. 1989 to 1996 was the last issue. It started, and so DC, the comic line, is what launched the Sandman. It went from issues 1 to 46 as a DC comic. And then at issue 47, DC had introduced the kind of adult imprint Vertigo. So they switched it over to that. From 47 to issue 75, it became Vertigo. And since Vertigo went kaput in 2020, now whenever they reissue or put out something Sandman-wise, it's under their new Black Label series. So a little bit of history there. So right off the bat, I'll ask you first question. Without getting into how you felt about the series in total, would watching the series ever make you want to read the comics?
Maybe. I have a hard time with comics and graphic novels.
Why is that?
I don't know. I think I just don't have I like to read a book and imagine what it might look like in my head.
Imagination.
And I do like art, and these artists are incredible. I just would rather use my imagination.
But if you like art, doesn't that, you can still use your imagination as to how everything flows and moves together.
I guess.
All right. So you're never going to read this, right? I'm never going to.
I might try it, but I can't promise anything.
Okay, that's fair. I just wanted to hear you say that. That's all. In the ensuing years, they have tried many times to make this into a live-action property, whether it was going to be a show or a movie. Movie was more prevalent for the most part. From 2013 to 2016, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was very heavily involved in making the Sandman film. He was going to play Morpheus. He dropped out in 2016. But prior to that, in 2001, Roger Avery, who is probably best known for working with Quentin Tarantino, he co-story wrote Pulp Fiction. He was trying to get a version together. And then James Mangold, who is the director of films such as Logan and Walk the Line, he at one point was trying to get an HBO series in the 2000s. That didn't work out. And then at another point, they wanted to approach, Neil Gaiman wanted to approach Eric Kripke, who's the creator of Supernatural and who also is the showrunner of The Boys. At one point, that didn't happen either. So eventually, Gaiman himself, David Goyer, who is probably best known for being involved in the Dark Knight trilogy, the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy, and a couple, he's written comics, JSA and stuff like that. And Alan Heinberg, who wrote Young Avengers and Wonder Woman in the comics, they developed this Netflix version that we eventually got. So, 11 episodes. First things first, did you appreciate the fact that these were not super long episodes, like 45 minutes to about an hour?
I did. And when I went through and made some notes, I realized how much happened in that amount of time. So it seemed longer, but not in a bad way. It just covered so much in that amount of time.
Right.
That thinking back, you're like, oh, that must have spanned over a few episodes, and it really didn't.
Right. Which is true of the book, too. Essentially, the main idea of the book is that there are these beings called the Endless. They're not gods. They're their own thing. And the Endless are essentially they're described many different ways. They're almost like the guardians or the avatars of the human condition in a way. So you have Dream, who is the main character, or at least the main Endless that we follow. He is the Sandman. So Dream, he is the Lord of the Dreaming, which is the dream realm that all people go to when they sleep. And then we don't get into all of them in the actual first season of this, but his siblings are Delirium, Death, Destruction, Desire, Despair, and Destiny. So they're all kind of the living embodiments, or I don't know, quasi-living, eternal embodiments of these different aspects of humanity and living beings in general. It's kind of tough to quantify, but did you understand the whole idea behind that?
Oh, absolutely. Morpheus talks a lot about being a servant of the humans.
Right. He at points, one of the things that's great about this and also great about the comic series is that, especially after what happens to him in the first bunch of issues and also in the first episodes, he's lost his connection with humanity for so long that he has to be repeatedly kind of taught lessons by all the people around him or beings around him that he trusts and confides in to kind of reconnect with humanity. I thought there was a lot of good stuff mined there as well.
Oh, definitely. That's a big part of the show.
Yeah, there's an episode in particular where, and it's also an issue, The Sound of Her Wings. I think it's the 4th episode of the show or 5th episode of the show, where he spends a day with his sister Death. The half of the episode is him spending a day with his sister Death. It was episode 4. And her connection, because her job is she's essentially the Grim Reaper. But she looks at it as a purposeful thing. Death is a part of life. There's a scene in it that honestly made me cry as hard as I've cried in anything in a long time involving a baby. You know, if you haven't seen it, you can just imagine. But it was hard to watch, but it was done incredibly tastefully and great. And then the second half of the episode is also a issue or several issues of the comic where he reconvenes every 100 years with a guy who, through machinations, is immortal. And his seeing this character who every 100 years has gone through different levels of either suffering or prosperity, kind of, you know, and essentially considers him a friend, something he doesn't realize he can have, kind of grounds him again as well. So that's some really cool stuff. Before we start talking about the cast, did you like that episode in particular?
The one with his sister Death?
Yes.
Yes. I thought it was great. I like the one with Hobgoblin, I think his name is.
It was all one episode, yeah.
Oh, they were...
Same episode, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because he spends the first half with Death, and then they flash back to how Death made Hob immortal.
Okay.
And then the second half was him revisiting Hob every 100 years.
Yes, that was a very, very good episode.
Yeah, that might have been the standout single episode. Although there was a lot of really good ones. All right, let's talk about the cast.
Shabuya roll call.
All right, I'm not going to go through all of this. It's a TV show and there's a lot of people, but I'll go through some of the standouts or the most important. Tom Sturridge plays Dream. No idea who Tom Sturridge is, but he nailed it. The only thing they didn't do in this series that they probably could have done was in the comics, he's much whiter, he's much paler, and his eyes are like starshine. Like his eyes are actually like stars. But I think that might have just taken out a little bit of the human element in the show, that they wanted him to kind of connect with people a little bit more. He was in a film called Velvet Buzzsaw that was on Netflix a few years ago. Boyd Holbrook, who I don't know if I've told you this before, but he was in Logan and The Predator. He played the Corinthian. He's one of my guy crushes. I've liked this guy forever.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Huh. There's something about him. So Boyd Holbrook plays the Corinthian. And this is one of the biggest changes in the whole, and not even so much a change, but just a modification. I guess that's just a fucking another word for change. In the comics, the Corinthian is there. The Corinthian is a nightmare that escapes from the dreaming and becomes a serial killer on Earth and inspires all these serial killers. That's all in this thing. But in the comic, he's a much smaller part. I think they figured they had to have kind of a single antagonist for him to kind of have a focus on, or at least that lasts the whole season. Because he shows up in episode 1 and he's in every episode until the final episode. So they definitely put a little bit more focus on the Corinthian than they did in the comics, but it actually worked out really well. It wasn't a change that I minded at all. Did you like that character?
I did like that character. Yeah, I mean, he was creepy, but he was also charismatic. He got a lot of action.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did. For sure. He likes guys, that's for sure.
I feel like your boy crush, you could have.
I probably could have. I might have gotten a piece of the Corinthian.
And I checked my notes. I just want to clear up that the death episode was actually episode 6, not 4.
Oh, okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
You held the 4 hand up, so I said 4.
I know. That's why I'm correcting myself.
Okay, I appreciate it. I appreciate when you correct yourself when you do something wrong and make me look like an asshole. I'm just fucking kidding. All right, Patton Oswalt, actually the first person cast in this entire thing. You know him from, Ratatouille. He played Remy and the King of Queens, and stand-up comedian, much more. He's Matthew the Raven. Matthew the Raven is a raven that is kind of Dream's companion. Dream has companion ravens in the series. In the first episode of the show, his original raven, Jessamine, ends up getting killed, and he doesn't want another raven, but they make Matthew up for him out of the soul of a human. And actually, I'll bring this up now, Matthew the Raven in the comic books is actually a character from the Swamp Thing comic called Matthew Cable. Matthew Cable dies in the dreaming and is resurrected as a Raven because he died in a coma. He was dreaming. He was able to be resurrected as a Raven. This series, produced by WB, and with all the mess of, you don't know anything about this, Lynn, but how discombobulated and disjointed Warner Brothers and DC stuff is, they chose not to, ever mention the Matthew Cable thing, which is a good thing because, they chose not to go into other possible series. Like later on, we meet Lita and Hector Hall. If you remember, it's the woman and her dead husband.
Yep.
He is actually at one point in the comics Dr. Fate, but they don't talk about that because I think they're just trying to keep this very straightforward. There's a few things like that in here. John D, the character who ends up with the Dreamstone and causes all the people the misery in the diner. He was a villain called Dr. Destiny. Back in the old days, he came across the Justice League. They take that part of his story away. So like anything like that, they took existing DC continuity and just kind of pushed it off to the side. Still used the character, but didn't give you like this is Matthew Cable from Swamp Thing. All right. Vivian Akiampong plays Lucienne. Lucienne is the librarian of the Dreaming and pretty much Morpheus's right-hand woman. She's kind of his conscience too, right?
I would say so. She's definitely his most loyal friend.
Yeah.
For a lack of a better word. She kept things going when he was imprisoned and did the best that she could. Yeah,
and there's points where some of the characters actually say that, we kind of look at you, not him. Right? There's a couple points where that's said, and she doesn't want that, though. She was in a film called The Witches that came out on HBO Max a couple years ago. There was a lot of, Neil Gaiman very deftly handled this on Twitter, but there was a lot of comic fans out there that had a lot of problems with some of the race changing and or gender changing in this. In the books, Lucienne is a character named Lucien. She's a white man. It doesn't fucking matter. It does not matter at all that they changed it to a African-American woman. The character's the same. This happened several times. Death in the comics is a pale goth girl. In this, it's again an African-American woman. There's several things they change in this, and a lot of people, of course, are claiming that you're just trying to be current or just trying to be woke or whatever, and it doesn't fucking matter. This is a story about fantastical beings. Like, do you agree with that? Do you feel like if something you loved very much, you loved the character from a novel you like very much, and they changed the gender or changed the race or something, but the character was true to the character, does that bother you?
It does not bother me, and all these actors nailed it.
Right?
I haven't read the comic, obviously, but in the show, they are great within their characters.
And that's a valid point that you say that, because you don't have to have read the comic to enjoy the show, right? Like this, there is a lot of very, very good paralleling and basing of this show off of what happened in the comic. There's a lot of stuff that's very fucking like right out of the book. More so than not, I would probably say. So if you're getting the story right and you're getting the general characterization right, I don't know why that's a problem, but we'll bring that up again, I'm sure at some point. Jenna Coleman played... she's Jenna Coleman, by the way, from Doctor Who. She was one of the companions. She plays Johanna Constantine and Lady Johanna Constantine. She is brought up in two different episodes at different time periods. She's playing not the same character, but a descendant of the same character. In the comics, I was a little confused by this one. In the comics, she is supposed to be John Constantine. They did change that. I honestly will say, and this is going to go against like what I just said a little bit, that's the only one that it doesn't bother me, but John Constantine is the one that's like the most in my head as a certain archetype of a character, and I felt like the character was different too a little bit. So I like her in this, and I'm fine with her in this, but John Constantine's the only one that I just felt like maybe, even if they made him a female, I felt like they didn't make her as gruff as the male version of the character is. So like I said, I don't have a problem with it. It's just more of that's a character that I wish they kind of beefed up a little bit more. I guess that's more what I'm saying, is that she wasn't really recognizable as a version of John Constantine as much as just like a newer character in my head. But again, no problem with no problem with the gender swapping on that at all. Let's see, who else do we have? David Thewlis was great in this. You might know him from The Big Lebowski. He was in Wonder Woman. He plays John D. He is a character that inherits Sandman's Dreamstone, and he spends a lot of time in a mental ward. He was mistreated as a youth, kind of abandoned, and he doesn't know how to deal with people or treat people, and he does some pretty horrible things. The issue of that comic, I don't know if it was called 24/7 or not, but I told you that years ago when I read this book, the issue of that comic that the episode is based on, where John D goes into a diner and with the Dreamstone begins to wreak havoc on everybody's lives. The episode was very good. The actual issue gave me a nightmare. I'm not even kidding. It's weird to say that, but did you like that episode in particular?
I liked it. It wasn't my favorite, but I did enjoy it.
Okay. Did you like the whole idea of like just turning people inside out until, they essentially are all killing each other left and right, like bringing about their worst qualities, and he's just doing it just because he can, because he has the power to. What does he keep saying? He's trying to, I can't remember what he keeps saying in it.
He's trying to free the world of lies.
Right. He's trying to get rid of all the lies. And essentially the idea is that every day we're just telling each other little lies. And he starts to take that down to the most base, sexuality, feelings about each other. And, it ends in murder and mayhem.
Yeah, it's basically taking away civilization and just people doing whatever they want for their own selfish reasons. Yeah.
I like how, as it goes along, he just goes in the freezer and gets like a giant tub of ice cream and he's just eating it like at the counter, very like just watching what's happening around him, which is like total craziness. But the issue that story takes place in, it freaked me the fuck out.
Are we going to talk about that more later?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Well, you want to just jump in now? You want to talk about it now?
Well, I was just going to say that in this episode, it kind of shows that all these people are bad if they're not good people if you take away the lies and what they're supposed to do. And I just don't think that, and maybe this is naive of me, but I would think if I had a handful of humans in a room, not every single one of them would end the way they did.
I kind of agree with you, and I kind of don't. I deal with people more than you do in life, and I'm always, I'm less and less amazed at how shitty people can be. You know what I mean? And I don't think everybody is bad. But I've said it before, this is going to dig deep, but the reason we'll never see world peace is because there's too many of us, and we don't have the same ideas. But the honest truth is if 10 people were stuck on an island, there would be 2 people that didn't agree with everybody else, and there'd be problems. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It's just, and I think I think you're right, but I don't think everybody in that diner was bad either. The waitress, she wasn't bad.
No, she wasn't bad, but I don't think I'm a saint by any means, but I think I genuinely want everyone to be happy. Like, it's not
understandable, but
me
not
first and everybody second.
Right, but there's a lot of people that aren't you. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm just saying that there was not even one representation of a person. Like, it would have been nice if they had one person walk out of there being like, yes, there's somebody who genuinely cares.
Well, I think it would have been her, but unfortunately she got so driven to madness that she pokes her eyes out, right? I mean,
yeah.
I do think that they supplied that in the story, but she's seen so much. I mean, and the kid who was trying to get the job, he really wasn't bad, but he got sucked into, that whole weird dynamic with that couple and everything.
Right. Yeah.
And their whole thing was, are either them really bad or are they just angered each other? I think the only one in that whole thing that was truly, truly bad was the cook, who essentially admits that he's a pedophile, at one point.
Oh, see, I just assumed that her son was an adult son.
Well, okay, so even if he was an adult son, this guy is like, let's say he's like 18, 19, college age. This guy's like 45. That's still, you know what I mean? That's kind of like.
I think I glossed that over for myself.
Yeah, it's a weird line. But all right, so Good episode, though. Definitely a good episode. Let's see. Gwendolyn Christie, who played, what was her name? Brienne of Tarth on Game of Thrones. She plays Lucifer. A lot of people were mad that they made a female Lucifer. Again, stupid. A lot of people mad that they used her as Lucifer because about 5 or 6 years ago, Fox took the Lucifer character from Sandman and made a series about him, and it was an actor named Tom Ellis. But it was not connected to this at all. So when Neil Gaiman put this together, he knew that it wasn't going to be connected to that series, so they had to recast, like they had to have their own Lucifer. He did say at one point they thought about Tom Ellis just playing a different version of the same character, but it just didn't work out. So they got Gwendolyn Christie. I thought she worked out well. I mean, she looks badass. She's got the fucking wings and,
right.
She's a fucking statuesque woman. And you could see her being kind of in charge of a place of that, like, kind of ilk. Did you have a problem with her in it?
I didn't. I like that she's blonde because I think when anybody thinks of Lucifer, they're not going to be like, oh, that's going to be a blonde white woman.
Right.
You kind of go a different route.
Go heavy metal. You go Dave Grohl in Tenacious D, right? With the fucking red skin and the fucking...
that makes it sound fun.
Yeah, with the fucking goat feet and everything. Yeah. All right. So that's all I'm going to go through for the cast on this thing. So the Sandman, the comic and the show, something they have in common is that it almost feels like an anthology, right? So you have a main through line, but you're also getting these one-off stories, right? So the season does that very well, where it kind of goes through different arcs in one 10-episode season, plus the 11th bonus episode, and you kind of hit waypoints throughout the whole thing. So I'll just kind of ask you how you felt about different parts of the season. As we begin, the season starts off with what the actual comic starts off with as well, is Dream's entrapment.
Right.
So a magician named Roderick Burgess, played by Charles Dance, by the way, from Game of Thrones and The Last Action Hero, great actor. His son has been killed in, I think, World War I. He wants to bring his son back, so he plans on capturing Death of the Endless. But he's not a good fucking magician. They kind of talk about that. And he captures an Endless, but he does not capture Death. He captures Dream. So he has Dream in his basement in his giant, like, English manor for 100+ years. I think they say 106 years. In the comic books, it's only 75 years. During that period of time that Dream is captured, the dreaming goes to complete, like, disarray, and the actual dreaming world, people start to suffer from kind of like these weird comas because they're not dreaming, or some people don't sleep at all.
Sleepy sickness?
Sleepy sickness, right. What did you like that setup? Were you interested? Were you waiting to find out how he got out or if he'd get out?
I did like the setup, and this was a prime example of one show that felt like you learned so much and went through so much that's surprising that they captured so much in one episode.
Yeah.
Because he's there the whole time. You learn about Burgess and his son Alex. You think Alex is going to come through, but he kills the Jessame the Raven, which really upsets Morpheus. You're just constantly, I was pulling for Alex, and he couldn't seem to get his shit together and let Dream go. And in the end, Dream gets out of his imprisonment because Alex's partner runs over the like the sand of protection or whatever.
Yeah, the binding spell, yeah.
With the wheelchair, and creates an opening so Morpheus could actually get out. And Paul kind of looks at him like... Yeah,
he escapes through one of the guards' dreams. I don't think they made it a point to go through the comics and try to make things like panel by panel. They didn't have to. But I will say the moment where Dream gets out of the glass chamber and he's naked and they show the portal open up and he like kind of stretches his arms back and leans back and goes into it, that is a fucking panel in the comic. That exact fucking pose and everything. It was just that. I'm just nerding out because that was a really fucking cool little moment.
His tools of power are also taken from him during this imprisonment.
Right. So then once he gets out of the imprisonment, he goes back to the dreaming. He sees what a mess has been made. He has to begin to repair the dreaming, but he also has to make himself more powerful. His tools are 3 things. What are the 3 things?
His sand, his helm, and his ruby.
Right. So he has the Dreamstone, which we talked about, that John Dee has his hands on. His helm, which is a helmet that he forged from a god, the god's skull and spine, that has somehow ended up in hell. And the sand, where was the sand? That was Constantine, right?
Yes.
Yeah, right. So he has to go get the sand from her. Real quick, I want to touch on this because it was also an upsetting moment. When he gets to the dreaming, Cain and Abel, who are also a part of the story in the comic, the first ever murder and murder victim, they live in the House of Secrets and House of Mystery. He needs a little bit extra power, and I was worried you weren't going to continue with the show after this scene. What does Dream do? And then I'll kind of go back and answer a question you had for me when we started watching the show.
There were 3 times in this series that I cried, and this was the first one. And I was actually thinking to myself, why did he make me watch this? But Cain and Abel have a pet gargoyle. His name is Gregory, and he's freaking adorable.
He's a dog. He's essentially a puppy, yeah.
And he's basically the center of Cain and Abel's days. And Morpheus has to recapture some of the power that he used to create Gregory. So he basically asks Gregory to sacrifice himself to the dream world so that Morpheus could go back and get his tools.
Right. And it's sad. You have this long goodbye between Cain and Abel and Gregory very, he sacrifices himself and he basically disintegrates back into sand and is absorbed by Morpheus. The reason I said this is because I don't think this makes Morpheus a bad guy. But before we watch the show, you just said to me, is the Sandman is he a good guy? Is he a bad? Because, a lot of times that's how we think of things. And I told you it's not that simple with him.
Right.
Right? Because he's above us all and he has like this very lofty position. He has to make hard choices.
He does, but as the show progresses, and I don't know if this is true in the comics, but he makes things fair. So he took Gregory so that he can meet with he wants to summon the Fates because he needs to know where his tools are.
Right.
So when he goes to pick up different gifts for the Fates, because you have to gift the Fates, I guess, for their advice, he picks up an egg. And Lucian asked him, did you forget to give this to the Fates? And he said, no, this egg isn't for them. And it turns out it's a baby gargoyle egg. And he gives that back to Cain and Abel.
Yeah, and you have to name it with a G, but he names it...
Irving.
Irving,
and then he changed it to Gerving.
Yeah, Gerving. Yeah. There's a couple moments in the series where you see how harsh he can be. In the bonus episode, and there's an issue of it, you find out that he was married at one point to one of the muses, Calliope. Their son died, and he abandoned her. There's an episode where he goes to hell, and he runs into one of his old lovers, and in the comic, you get further into it that he banished her there. So he definitely can have his fucking bitchy moments for sure. But I think part of the story is about him reconnecting and learning from his mistakes. All right, so you got that. Then we go on the 3 journeys. He goes to present day London to meet up with Constantine or Constantine. I think they say it's pronounced Tyne in this. It's one of those things that I always say differently, no matter what. He ends up getting the sand back from her. He goes to hell, and he has to challenge the being that essentially took his helm, kind of to they have like an old school I don't know, like imaginary throwdown.
Your mama jokes.
They have a Your Mama Jokes competition. He wins, takes the helmet back, and then he goes at the end of the episode where John Dee has caused all the havoc in the diner. He goes and reclaims the Dreamstone, and he actually, he just brings John Dee back to the hospital because he realizes, he's not going to kill the guy. He just realizes that this is someone. Did you like those episodes that surrounded those kind of 3 things?
I did in each episode. So you just talked about 3 separate episodes. The Sand with Constantine and the Helm with the Demon in Hell in the rap battle.
Right.
And then
Mom Spaghetti.
the Ruby with the Diner episode.
Yeah, what was your favorite of those 3?
I would say the Hell episode.
Yeah.
And that's when we first meet John D as well.
Yes, yeah. John D comes in a little bit earlier than that, right? He comes in, I think, 1 episode earlier at the end, and then rolls into it.
Ethel meets him, at the institution.
Yeah, and then he
gives him the protection amulet.
Correct. He gets the protection amulet, which he ends up giving to... Who the hell did he give that to?
He gave it to the Good Samaritan that drove him around.
Correct, right. The woman from Ted Lasso, right.
Yes,
he gives
the therapist
from Ted Lasso. He gives her the protection amulet because she took a chance on him, even though he did some terrible things while she was with him, and he took care of her on that end. All right, so we have the journey for the items. We have I'll jump ahead a little bit. We have the whole Dream Vortex story, which introduces us to, what was the Dream Vortex's name again?
Rose
Walker. I've got to say, we didn't talk about the actress. Do you have the actress's name there?
I don't.
Okay. We didn't talk about the actress who played Rose Walker. I did not write that one down. I thought she was initially a weak link in the show, but I felt like as the show went on, she got better.
I feel like she was purposely acting as the weak link because the progression of her acting skills, not skills, I don't want to call them skills, but her character becomes more robust, for a lack of a better word, from the beginning to the end, and that's kind of how her power was accumulating too.
Okay, that's fair. So to kind of just summarize that whole bit, a Dream Vortex is born, essentially what would you say a Dream Vortex is, Lindsay, as they explain it in the show?
I don't remember how they explained it, but basically it is someone who could become more powerful in the dream world and cause things that throw the dream world out of kilter. And at the end of the episode 5 with the diner is the first time we meet Desire.
Right. Desire is basically one of the endless, but we kind of find out that Desire is a bitch, kind of, right? Is just fucking around, along with their twin, which is Despair. They seem to have some kind of thing going on where they're fucking with Morpheus.
They want his power. They want to combine the dream world with their powers.
Right. Did you like that caricature where, especially, and I thought this was really good because this is a 30-year-old book, Desire in the comics is also kind of written or drawn as this transgendery character. And the actor, again, I didn't write down the actor's name. It's Mason something, I believe. They were great in that role.
I think it's perfect because Desire is for everyone, right? And everything. Every being desires something.
Right.
So being a they, they're, them, it kind of encompasses everyone.
Somebody out there got mad about it, though. Somebody was pissed off.
Well, that's because people don't like uniqueness and people being comfortable with who they are.
Some male actor out there said, they took our jab. But no, so you're right. So a Dream Vortex can, like you said, become more powerful than even Morpheus to an extent. And also in the real world can move into dreams of people that are around him or her. And we see that several times. She ends up in a kind of this boarding house, B&B, populated by all these kind of crazy characters. A couple of like goth sisters, one that doesn't talk, one that does. Upstairs, you have this kind of reclusive gentleman. What was his name again?
Gilbert,
the keeper of the house. Hal, who is essentially a drag queen, ex-Broadway person who is in this little town in Florida. She can go into their dreams, and she does multiple times. Ken and Barbie, this weird couple. Barbie has these dreams, and there's actually at least one full issue in the comic where they go to her world where she's like a princess, and Ken is like just always fucking other women in his dreams. So the whole Dream Vortex storyline is kind of how the whole season ends. Everybody is trying to find, like, Morpheus is trying to find the Dream Vortex. the dream vortex, Rose is trying to find her brother. Her and her brother had been separated years prior through a divorce. Her mother ended up dying, and the brother ended up in the worst foster care in the world. If there was one thing in this season that I was disappointed in, was we build up the foster father character as being this worse abuser, piece of shit, like horrible, horrible man that keeps the kid locked in the basement, doesn't feed him very much, is only doing it to accept like $800 in like stipends a month, but doesn't treat the kid well at all. And we're waiting for him to get his comeuppance. And he does get his comeuppance. The Corinthian, who is also very interested in the dream vortex, because for the Corinthian, the dream vortex means freedom from Morpheus. The dream vortex could destroy Morpheus, and he can be on Earth forever is what he wants. He never wants to go back to the dreaming. He does kill the fuck out of the foster family. Even the mother, who didn't probably deserve it other than her silence. But they didn't fucking show it. I wanted to see him rip this guy like in half. Did you feel the same way that I think it was an off-camera kill, that if there was ever an on-camera kill you wanted was to see this guy suffer?
I was okay with how they portrayed it because in your mind, you're able to create your own.
You and the fucking imagination again.
It's like I'm Figment.
Yeah, you're like
Disney. I'm a purple dragon, or what is he? Is he a dragon?
He's a dragon.
Yeah, he's a flying dragon.
Epcot.
Yep,
Figment.
I do want to mention, so Barbie and Ken, and you said how they have strange dreams. Barbie's dream, she's like a princess.
Yeah.
And she reminds me of Dee Reynolds in Always Sunny when she's in that The Night Man Cometh. With that dress, and she can't raise her arms, but the dress looks almost exactly the same.
Yeah, and she has her giant like walrus dog friend.
Yes,
Martin Tenbones. Yeah, it was very cool. So that's kind of like how we get to the end of the season. Is the last couple episodes really revolve around the dream vortex, and there's a serial killer convention that the Corinthian is going to attend. And it all kind of converges upon there. Also, Lyda Hall, who is friends with Rose Walker. Her husband died. I think they made it clear a couple years ago. But she's continuously conversing with him in just like she could talk to his ghost. And at one point, she finds out that he is hiding in the dreaming. He's got a house. He wants her to move into the dreaming with him. Right? And to live her life there. Did you like that aspect of the story at all? Or was that like a part of the story where you were kind of tuning out a little bit waiting to get back to the regular stuff? Because that's like really like C-level stuff.
I thought it was okay. I mean, it did help with the vortex story and how it was the disintegration of reality versus dreams. And they had, like dream earthquakes at that house, and you could actually see the ground separating from the vortex, causing this to be something that could actually happen. So I don't know if I liked it or disliked it, but I think it was necessary to get the point across.
I thought the actress who played Lyda Hall, who was beautiful, I thought she was weak. I honestly have to admit, like, she was one of the weaker acting points of the show. But we do get a very important plot point, which I will not spoil, even though we're spoiling everything here. I don't want to go further into Sandman for you or for the listener, but she ends up becoming pregnant in the dreaming, and the baby is born in the real world. Very important. That's all I'll say about that. You said you cried in 3 points. I'm assuming one was the gargoyle, as you said. One, I'm assuming, was the baby, because I think I looked over at you and you were crying, right?
Yes, the baby, and we didn't talk about that episode yet.
All right, go ahead and bring it up.
So the episode 6 is where we meet Dream Sister Death.
Right.
And they have kind of this funny meeting at a public park where this guy's playing soccer. And you see Morpheus feeding the birds, and he's dressed in black and looking all emo. And it's kind of funny because people are curious about him, and he catches the soccer ball with one hand.
Right.
And then his sister shows up, and she's all in black too. I feel like that's how I celebrate the summer as well. I just don't look as cool as they do. But in this meeting, Morpheus is sad because he's regained all his tools, but he's kind of lost his way and his purpose.
Yep.
And he's tired. So she takes him with her as she helps people move to death.
Right.
as she helps people move to death, he goes along the journey and he sees how kind she is to people and he wonders how she does such a terrible job, because not that she's doing a terrible job, but bringing people to death seems like something terrible that needs to be done. So she explains that she's a servant to the humans and they all just need a kind face in order to accept the transition to death.
Right. And there's a bunch of great little scenes. You know, some of them are easier than others. Again, there's a scene where, you know, an older guy, you know, who's about to go kind of accepts it kind of easily. And you get a scene of a mother putting an infant in a crib, leaving the room. And I don't even want the line fucking killed me. I'm not going to repeat it, but the line is what made me fucking like lose my shit.
Yeah.
But also, you know, you go through and like you said, he's learning from her. He knows that this is her purpose. She admits that at one point she got very tired of it, but then she realized that she's doing something that needs to be done.
And she starts referring to it as a gift.
Right.
That baby scene, which is so heartbreaking. What is very, I think, respectful of the way they filmed it is before the mom comes back in the room,
you don't see it.
They leave.
They leave, right.
So you don't have to live that trauma.
Right. I think you hear her say something initially, but they're gone by then.
Yeah, she encourages Dream to leave with her immediately.
She can ease the baby's, you know, understanding of Jesus, fuck. She can ease the baby's understanding of what's happening, but she can't ease the mother's pain. And that's the second part that, you know, I'm glad we didn't see that.
Right. And also part of this episode is when we meet the human Hob.
Yes.
Who Dream and Death overhear him at a tavern saying that he'd like to live forever. So Dream and Death make an agreement that she would grant that to Hob. That Death would grant that to Hob, but Dream had to come back every 100 years and check in with him.
Right.
And this was part of Dream's realization that inherently most people want to live. And they want to live even if things suck. That was part of Hob and his friendship and meeting every 100 years. He would check in to see what's happened. Sometimes Hob was up, sometimes Hob was at his lowest. But he never said that he wanted to die.
No, he kept living. And the last time they had a meeting before Morpheus's imprisonment, they had a terrible fight. And, you know, Morpheus was offended that Hob, I think, would call him a friend or, you know, infer that they could be friends. Hob shows up, 100 years later. Morpheus doesn't show up. But Hob does not give up on him and shows up 100 years later. Even though the place is different now for the first time ever. Morpheus comes and they have like the first time where they just kind of have like this, like, it seems like a sit down, good conversation. Not that their conversations weren't good, but before it was more like Morpheus was an interviewer and Hob was just telling his story every time.
Was it 100 years later, or did Hob just keep coming back every single day until Morpheus made it? Because Morpheus was imprisoned and that's why he couldn't go meet him. And I could have sworn they showed him in the 80s. And so if they showed him...
No, they showed him in the 80s. He showed up and he wasn't there.
Right, but I'm saying they didn't meet in 2080. Hob kept coming back every day until Morpheus was released, and then he went to see him.
Shit, I didn't even think about that. You're right. Oh, interesting. All right. I didn't even think about that. Look at that. You're getting your little fucking pay attention points.
My little pay attention points.
What was the third part that made you cry?
The third part was the story about Jed and the nightmares that got away. So there are 3 nightmares in this series that got away. And we know about the Corinthian. And then we hear about one other. I can't remember what they called her as a nightmare, but I believe her name was Galt.
Galt, yeah.
And they couldn't find Jed in the dreaming world because she was able to sever the dream consciousness from Jed because she saw how much his life stunk and she wanted to give him a reprieve.
Jed being Jed Walker, the brother of the Dream Vortex, Rose Walker.
Right. And this is why Morpheus had trouble locating Jed.
Who, funnily enough, in his dream world, was pretending to be the Sandman, a different version of the Sandman from DC Comics back in the day, which I just thought was funny, that he was also portraying the Sandman.
There's a few times in the series where you see Morpheus be amused, almost proud, and when Jed is behaving, as if he's a superhero who's the Sandman, you see that look. And another one is in the tavern when Edgar Allan Poe is there.
No, William Shakespeare, right?
Oh, Shakespeare, yeah.
Yep.
Oops, I went a whole different way with that.
That's fine.
But with William Shakespeare, everybody thinks he's a crazy person, and Morpheus is drawn to him and brings out that
kind of inspires him.
That talent. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
So it was pretty neat to see that. But with Galt, when she is captured and brought back to the Dream Kingdom, Morpheus is so mad at her. She's like, I don't want to just be a nightmare. I don't want to make the humans cry. I want to help. And so he bans her to the darkness. And later in the movie, he brings her back. And he brings her back as a dream. She's so beautiful. And she has these wings. And I'm getting verklempt now.
She looks like a butterfly almost, but like almost black at the same time.
Yeah, and has kind of celestial glowiness to her, but her face is just so happy that she got to do this. And plus, there's the bigger storyline of Morpheus growing.
Well, yeah, he the whole situation, everything that comes to an end. I mean, there's a line in it, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's a line in it where at the end of the whole thing, he destroys the Corinthian because he feels like he has to. The Corinthian is like a faulty fucking project of his, right? But someone says something about the Corinthian, and he says something like, I can't remember the line, but he basically makes it sound like, I'm not done with him yet. And in the comics, he brings the Corinthian back at one point, but a better version.
Right. He basically accepts fault since he created this nightmare. And he wants to make him better, whatever that means in the future. And there's one more nightmare that was missing, which is Fiddler's Green.
Fiddler's Green, I don't think was supposed to be a nightmare, though. I think Fiddler's Green, I don't know if they called it a nightmare or if they just were worried it was missing because it was actually Gilbert, the guy who lives in Rose Walker's bed and breakfast house. But he was actually like a whole segment of the dreaming. He was like a landing point. He was, I think, is how they explained it. And when he goes back to being, it's like this beautiful forested area with flowers. And he invites Rose to sit under his tree if she chooses not to die and not to live. Right. Yeah. No, I don't know. All great stuff. I think we went through a good amount, and hopefully people that haven't seen it might listen to us and go through and check it out. I'll leave the 11th episode, the bonus episode, a mystery if you want to check it out, if you have not checked it out already. But if you didn't know about it and you watched The Sandman and you just listened to this, go back into your Netflix, go back to Sandman. You'll see that it says it is a new episode available. It's an hour long, and it is from the comics. It's 2 separate comic issues. One is like 20 minutes long, one's like 40 minutes long. So go check those out. All right. So I think first question before we give this thing a rating of any sort is season 2, when it decides to come out, is this something that you would want to watch right away? Is it something you're fine with just seeing season 1? Are you curious as to how this moves along?
I'm very curious how it moves along. And there is I know we're kind of leaving a lot of stuff out, so when people watch it, it's new to them. And
yeah, it's not a movie. It's a 10-episode series. It's tough to talk about everything.
Well, I think, too, we did a good job of letting people watch it and experience it without our thoughts. But at the end, they show something for the next season.
Yeah, you're right.
And I'm wondering if the next season is going to be darker than this season.
Yeah, as the books go along, there definitely is some dark stuff. And as we get further into the rest of the Endless that we haven't met yet, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. All right, why don't we rate this thing?
You gentlemen seen your midterm grades yet?
Well, they're not posted yet, sir.
I've seen them.
All right, Lynn, so season 1 of The Sandman, And I'll also throw episode 11 into your entire, like, rate it on everything. Scale of 0 to 5, 0 being the worst thing ever, 5 being the best, quarter and half scale optional. What do you give season 1 of The Sandman? On Netflix. If you have Netflix, go check it out.
I think I'm going 4.5 again.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna go 4.5 as well. I really enjoyed this. I didn't feel like there was much left out. Like I said, there was a couple of acting choices I wasn't super thrilled with. I had no problem with any of the gender or race or any of that swapping at all. All good with that. It was really imaginative. The CG was really good. Tom Sturridge carries this by with his portrayal of Morpheus. I felt like I was reading the book. His voice is now kind of what I'll probably hear the next time I read Sandman or something Sandman related. Good direction. I liked everything. Again, like I said before, I kind of wish that the Joanna Constantine character was a little bit closer to what I envisioned John Constantine as. Again, doesn't have to be the man version, but just, a little more cockney, a little bit more gruff. But other than that, I felt like they got so much right from the book. So yeah, I'll give it a 4.5 as well. I look forward to it greatly. And the bonus episodes were fun. The bonus episodes were good. They kind of added a little bit. One of them is just kind of a cool story. And it's animated, by the way, the first half. And then the second half was kind of just another cool anthology almost story where that's one of the things they do so great in this is that it's not just about the Sandman, but it's about people in the world and their connection to the Sandman or their connection to the dreaming. And you can go off to different places. And that's what makes this show kind of unique and interesting. So 4.5. All right, that's it. Lynn, thanks for chilling out with me. It's been fun. Now let's go watch some, I don't know, South Park. I'm catching up on South Park.
And take a shower. It's always like 1,000 degrees when we record.
I know, it's nasty. It's definitely nasty. And I kind of noticed you were smelling earlier today too, so I'll cut that out. You're going to get mad at me. All right, so until next time, check us out, The Pint, at The Pint Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, The Pint Podcast on Facebook. You could also check us out on all the pod-catching apps that exist in the world today. You can go to Spotify. You can go to iHeartRadio. You can go to Good Pods. You can go to Google Podcasts. You can go to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever the fuck that thing is called now. You could also go to... See ya.
It's over, Johnny. It's over! Nothing is over! Nothing! You just don't turn it off!